I didn't plan to say any of this out loud. Not ever. But secrets rot in the dark, and mine has been eating me alive. I stayed with someone who didn't love me. Not because I believed he'd change, not because I thought I could earn his affection, but because I didn't know how to exist without being attached to someone. His name doesn't matter. Not anymore. What matters is how small I became around him, how quiet, how invisible. He never raised his voice. He didn't have to. But love isn't a prize. It's not something you beg for with silence. And every night, when he'd roll away from me in bed, I'd stare at the ceiling, feeling myself dissolving, like I was fading from my own life. And yet, I stayed. Why, you might ask? Because loneliness felt like death, and I had never been taught how to survive myself. I remember one night, the moment everything truly cracked. He came home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. He didn't bother lying anymore. He didn't even look guilty. Just tired. Tired of me. Tired of the performance of pretending I mattered. He said, "I don't know what you want from me." And my voice, it barely came out. "I don't know either," I said. That's when it hit me. I wasn't fighting for him. I was fighting for the fear of being alone. That fear is louder than heartbreak. It's colder than betrayal. It wraps around your ribs and squeezes until you forget you're allowed to breathe. But there's something darker. Something I haven't admitted to anyone. Something I'm barely admitting to myself. I didn't stay because I loved him. And I didn't stay because he pitied me. No. I stayed because without him, I'd have to face the emptiness I'd been running from my whole life. I stayed because the silence inside me is terrifying, and living with someone who didn't love me was easier than living with myself. But this confession has a twist, a truth I've kept buried, a truth that changed everything. And when you hear it, you'll understand why I can't go back, why I can't undo what happened next, why this story doesn't end gently. This is my dark truth. After that night, something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a small crack, like the quiet fracture in a porcelain cup, barely visible, but fatal if you know where to look. He started coming home later. He stopped initiating conversations entirely. Sometimes he'd walk past me in the hallway, and it felt like a stranger brushing through my ribs. But I didn't confront him. I didn't scream. I didn't ask who she was. I didn't ask if he wished I'd disappear, because I already knew the answer. Instead, I convinced myself that if I became even smaller, even quieter, even easier to ignore, maybe he'd stop resenting me. Maybe he'd remember the version of me he tolerated at the beginning. But that's the thing about shrinking yourself for someone else. You don't disappear to them. You disappear to yourself. One morning, I realized I hadn't heard my own laugh in weeks. Not even a fake one. My voice sounded foreign. as if my throat had forgotten its job. I was becoming hollow. The turning point came on a Tuesday, a quiet, gray Tuesday, the kind of day the sky looks tired of pretending it's still holding itself together. I had made him breakfast, something he didn't ask for, hoping it would soften his mood. He walked into the kitchen, glanced at the plate, and said, "I'm not eating that." No anger, just dismissal. Like I wasn't a person, just background noise. I apologized for something that wasn't wrong. And that was the moment I felt a kind of shame I still can't describe. The shame of begging for crumbs, knowing you deserve at least bread. Later that night, I found his phone on the counter, unlocked, open to a message thread. Her name was at the top. My hands shook, not because I didn't expect what I'd see, but because I did. I had known for months, and still, seeing it, the proof, felt like swallowing ice. I read one message, just one. It said, "She won't leave. She needs me too much." That's when something inside me died. Not the love, not the hope, something deeper. The part of me that believed people stayed because they cared, because they wanted me, because I had worth. I put his phone down. I didn't cry. The tears were long gone, used up months earlier. Instead, I cleaned the kitchen, wiped every surface, washed every plate, moved silently, efficiently, like a ghost haunting my own home. Because when you've been unloved long enough, your body learns how to disappear, even while standing in the light. But here's where the twist begins. Not the final one. That's coming later. But the first one. The one that started everything. That night, while he slept beside me, snoring softly, peacefully, I realized something horrible. Something I'm ashamed to admit. I didn't want him to leave. Not yet. Not because I needed him, but because I needed to become someone else first. I needed to break the version of me who clung, the version of me who begged, the version of me who feared silence more than suffering. I needed to transform, slowly, quietly, so quietly that he wouldn't notice. Not until it was too late, because the next phase of the story is not about him. It's about who I became in the shadows of his indifference. The version of me that learned how to breathe again, how to listen to her own voice, how to sharpen her pain into something dangerous. And by the time he realized what I had become, I was no longer the girl who stayed out of fear. I was something else entirely. This is my dark truth. The morning after reading his messages, I woke up before him, something I rarely did. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the way the early light touched the floor. Everything felt still, but not the kind of stillness that comes from peace. It was the stillness before an earthquake, the soft warning the world gives before everything shifts. He stirred behind me, half asleep. He wrapped an arm around my waist out of habit, not affection, and whispered my name. For a moment, a single pathetic moment. My heart jumped. It reacted before my mind remembered the truth. How foolish that my body still reached for him, even after my soul had let go. But I didn't move his arm away. Not yet. Not because I wanted his touch, but because I wanted him to think nothing had changed. I needed time. Time to become the person who could walk away without breaking. Time to prepare my goodbye. I started small, quietly, almost invisibly. I stopped checking his moods, stopped anticipating his needs, stopped rearranging my entire personality just to fit into the shrinking space he allowed me. Every day, I reclaimed one tiny piece of myself. I went for walks alone, bought a journal, wrote things I wasn't brave enough to say out loud. Things like, I miss myself, and I want to leave. And who was I before him? I didn't show him anger. I didn't confront him about the messages. I became calm, calmer than I had ever been. And that scared him. He didn't say it, of course he wouldn't, but I saw it. One night he asked, "Are you okay?" For the first time in months. And I smiled. A small, controlled smile. The kind that hides entire wars behind it. I said I'm fine. It was the first true lie I ever told him. But it was also the moment I realized something powerful. He only cared about losing me when he felt I was no longer caged. When I loved him desperately, he resented me. When I needed him, he pitied me. But when I pulled away, silently, gently, he became afraid. It was like watching a man wake up and realize the door of the prison he built was suddenly unlocked, and the prisoner already halfway down the road. Then came the second twist, the one that forced everything into motion. I was cleaning out the top drawer of my desk, the one he never looked in, when I found something I had forgotten. A letter, folded neatly, with my name written on the front in my mother's handwriting. My mother, who had passed away 2 years before I met him. The letter was dated 4 months before she died. I had been too afraid to open it back then. Afraid of her disappointment, afraid of her honesty, afraid she'd see right through me the way she always did. But that night, I opened it, slowly, carefully, hands trembling. Inside, there was only one sentence, one simple sentence that destroyed me and rebuilt me in the same breath. It said, "Never let loneliness convince you that someone is love." I read it 5 times, 10 times. My breath shook, my ribs tightened. She knew. She knew what I would become if I wasn't careful. I cried for the first time in months. Not because of him, not because of the messages, but because the person who loved me the most had tried to save me before she even knew his name, before she knew the shape of my future wounds, before she knew I'd stay with someone who didn't love me simply because I didn't know how to be alone. The next morning, I made a decision, a quiet one, a dangerous one, the kind of decision that changes everything without ever raising its voice. I wasn't going to leave him. Not yet. No. I was going to let him watch me, stop needing him completely, entirely, until the day he reached for me and found nothing left to hold. And only then, only when he finally wanted me, would I walk away. This is my dark truth. I didn't leave him, not yet. I simply stopped needing him, day by day, breath by breath, and it changed everything. At first it was small. I stopped waiting for him to come home, stopped asking where he was going, stopped pretending I didn't see the lies written all over his face. And then something unexpected happened, something I never thought I'd see. He started trying. He'd bring me my favorite tea without asking. He touched my back when he walked past me. He'd say things like, "I feel like I'm losing you," and "Did I do something wrong?" and "You've been so quiet lately." I didn't answer his questions. I didn't soothe him. I didn't reach for him out of habit or fear. I just smiled softly, the same controlled, gentle smile I had once used to hide my pain. Only now, I used it to hide my freedom. He started spiraling. He didn't know how to handle the version of me that didn't cling to him, didn't chase him, didn't worship him. The more he reached for me, the more he realized I wasn't there anymore, not in the way he had always counted on. It was around this time that he tried to fix things. He booked a weekend trip, just the two of us, a place he knew I loved, somewhere he had said was boring when I first asked to go. He planned everything, the hotel, the restaurant, even the long walk through the gardens he once said he didn't see the point of. And when he told me about the trip, he looked different, like a man afraid of losing something he finally realized he needed. But I only said, "That's thoughtful. Thank you." Calm, polite, unmoved. And I watched it hit him. The truth, the fear, the panic. He had taken me for granted for so long that he didn't know how to handle the quiet version of me that no longer needed his approval to breathe. Then came the moment that broke him open. It was late, almost midnight. He stood in the doorway of our room while I journaled, something he used to tease me for. He said, "You don't look at me the same." His voice cracked, just slightly, like he didn't mean for it to, like the truth slipped out before he could hide it. And I didn't look up, not right away. I let the silence stretch just long enough for him to feel it. Then I said, in the softest voice I have, "I know." Just that, 2 words. Quiet, controlled. He swallowed hard. I heard it. I felt it. And for the first time since we met, he looked small, unsure, lost. He whispered, "Do you still love me?" And I closed my journal, placed it gently on the table, turned to him, and gave him the truth in the calmest voice possible. I loved the version of you I created in my mind, but I'm not sure he ever existed. He sat down, slowly, like the floor was suddenly unfamiliar, like gravity had shifted beneath him. It was the most honest moment we ever shared, not because I was cruel, but because I was finally free enough to tell the truth without fear of losing him. But if he thought that was the end, he was wrong. The real twist came 3 days later, when a message popped up on my phone. A name I hadn't seen in years. A person I never expected to speak to again. Someone who would change everything. My ex. The man I dated before him. The one I left because I thought I wasn't enough. The one who told me, "You deserve more love than I can give you right now," and meant it. His message said, "I heard you're back in the city. Is that true?" And in that moment, with my boyfriend watching me carefully from across the room, trying not to look desperate, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Not of another relationship. Not of running back to an old love. But the possibility that my life could exist outside of pain, outside of fear, outside of loneliness, masquerading as love. The first time I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of being alone, not of starting over, not of walking away. I wasn't the broken version of myself who begged for attention. I wasn't the girl who stayed because she didn't know who she was. I was becoming someone else, someone stronger, smarter, calmer, dangerously calm. And he could feel it. He watched me type my reply. He held his breath. He waited for the betrayal. He waited for the confirmation that he had finally lost me. And I simply wrote, "Yes, I'm here. Nothing more, nothing less." He asked, "Who is that?" His voice shaking. A voice I'd never heard from him before. A voice that told me he finally, fully understood I no longer belonged to him, not even a little. I looked at him, expression steady, voice slow and soft. Someone who knew me before I forgot my worth. This is my dark truth. I didn't leave him immediately. People like to imagine strength is loud, a slammed door, a shouted goodbye, a dramatic exit. But real strength, the kind that comes after surviving yourself, is quiet. So quiet it feels like a prayer whispered in the dark. I didn't pack in anger. I didn't accuse him. I didn't demand explanations. I simply prepared. A box a day, a drawer a week, little pieces of my life folded neatly, softly into the future. And he watched it, helpless, confused, frantic in a way he couldn't hide. Every night he'd ask, "What's wrong? What can I do? Just talk to me." But I was done talking to someone who only listened when he felt me slipping. Not when I was hurting, not when I was breaking, only when the loss finally touched him. So I gave him silence, a calm, unshakable silence that spoke all the truths I no longer had the energy to say out loud. The final moment came one rainy morning. The kind of morning where the world feels washed clean. I was sitting at the table, drinking tea, finishing the last page of my journal. He walked in, eyes red from another sleepless night, and asked the question he had been avoiding for weeks. "Are you leaving me?" The room held its breath. Even the rain paused, and I answered the same way I had lived these last months. Gently, honestly, without fear. "Yes, I am." He sat down slowly, like the weight of the truth finally broke him. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He whispered, "Why? I'm trying. I'm really trying." And I looked at him with all the compassion I once saved only for him, and now, finally, saved for myself. You're trying now because you feel me leaving, not because you love me. You didn't choose me until you realized you were losing me. His eyes filled, but I stayed calm, not cold, just resolved. He asked, "Is it because of that man? The one who messaged you?" I shook my head. No. This isn't about another man. This is about the woman I finally remembered I could be. I stood, walked past him, picked up the last box I had packed. At the door, he said the one sentence I once would have died to hear. "I love you." And I turned back, voice steady, heart unshaken. "No, you love the idea of losing me. That isn't love. That's fear." I stepped out into the rain, soft, cold, cleansing rain, and for the first time in years, I felt my lungs fill fully. Freedom tastes like oxygen. I didn't run to my ex. I didn't rush into anything new. I learned to walk alone, to eat alone, to sleep without feeling abandoned, to breathe without apologizing for it. I learned that solitude isn't a punishment. It's a home you build inside yourself so you never again settle for someone who mistakes your loneliness for devotion. And months later, when he finally messaged me, the boyfriend I left, he wrote, "I miss you. Come back." I smiled softly, sadly, but with strength, and replied, "I hope you find someone who loves you enough to never shrink themselves the way I did." Then I blocked his number, not out of anger, but out of growth, the kind of growth you can't undo. I stayed with someone who didn't love me because I didn't know how to be alone. But once I truly learned, I realized leaving him was the kindest thing I ever did for both of us. And now I know this. Never confuse tolerance with love. Never mistake pity for affection. And never let your fear of being alone turn you into a ghost in someone else's life. This is my dark truth. If you stayed to the end of this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Thanks.